This is literacy scores for young people, 16 to 25-year-olds, assessed for literacy levels. You know, there are these international literacy and maths tests in different, so you can compare how well people do in different countries. Their scores are classified by how many years of education their parents have had. So down here are well-educated parents. These are the scores of the kids of well-educated parents at the top of society. And down here, the scores of kids of badly educated parents at the bottom of society. And again, you see, the fact that Sweden is more equal than Canada, and Canada more equal than the United States, makes the biggest difference to the scores at the bottom of the society, but even at the top, you do a little bit better. Even if you're at the top of society, you do a little bit better if you're in a more equal society. And if you think of where most of us are, somewhere in the middle, it makes quite an appreciable difference. So it's not simply that more unequal societies have more poor people. This is not actually telling you whether most of the population are up here or most of them are down there. What it's telling you is that wherever you are, you do less well in the more unequal society. Exactly like the graph I showed you comparing England and Wales with Sweden. We also looked at data for the American states. What we did was simply look at data for something like 3,100 counties in the USA. And we compared the county median income, how rich the county is on average, and its death rates. So county incomes and county death rates. But we divided the counties between whether they were in the 25 more equal states or the 25 less equal states. And the relationship between county median income and county death rates in the less equal states is this top red line, and in the more equal states in this lower line. And what that tells you quite simply is that, again, wherever you are in the income scale, your death rates are lower if you're in a more equal state than not. But again, the same pattern. The differences are bigger lower down in society. The differences in death rates there are bigger than they are at the top of society. But even at the top of society, people seem to do better. And there are now a number of other pieces of research that seem to have the same implications. Okay, now I want to say a little bit about why we're apparently so affected by inequality. And it seems surprising because you might go from one country to another feeling that you haven't got a clue whether one society is more equal than another. Though I think actually people do occasionally make remarks that suggest that they do feel that there's something different about one society than another, which fits in with this data. I said at the beginning that where this research started was trying to understand social class differences in death rates, the big differences in life expectancy between rich and poor. And one of the big changes in our understanding of health over the last probably 20 years has been that it's not simply that your circumstances affect your health directly, whatever you feel and think about them, but that a lot of the causation goes through what you think and feel. So it's not simply that you're in bad housing and have poor diets and so on. It's the anxiety, the depression, the stress that goes with feeling that you're at the bottom of the pile or whatever. And I think you can divide the main, what we call psychosocial risk factors, i.e. the way these risk factors go through the mind, they involve your thoughts and feelings, into these three categories. Risk factors to do with social status, and I emphasize I don't simply mean having more cars or bigger houses. I mean simply where you are in the social hierarchy. Something more like feelings of superiority and inferiority, perhaps. Social status. Weak social affiliations. lots of studies now that show that people who are better connected, better relationships with their partners, more friends involved in community life, any of those things, they seem to be highly protective of health. Not just in observational studies, but also, for instance, when people have been given nasal drops with cold viruses in, so they've been given the same measured exposure to infection, and you give them questionnaires about how many friends do you have. And you find the ones who are more isolated are perhaps 3 or 4 times as likely to develop a cold from the same measured exposure to infection. People have also done experiments making little puncture wounds, I think in the backs of people's hands, and seeing how quickly they heal. And if your relationship with your partner is pretty stressful and not going well, it seems to heal more slowly. So observational and experimental studies that show the importance of social connectedness and stress in early life, both prenatal stress, maternal stress in pregnancy, affecting fetal development, affecting, if you like, the programming of stress responses, and stress in early childhood. If you like, the sort of biological side, I suppose, of what psychologists have always said about the importance of early childhood in affecting the development of personality. And we now know how those early life things affect health, even of people my age and older, making you more vulnerable to heart disease and stroke and diabetes and so on. But anyway, looking at these sort of categories of psychosocial risk factors which all work apparently through chronic stress. People are beginning to understand the biology of chronic stress, how it affects the immune system and the cardiovascular system and so on. It seemed to me that maybe there is a sort of common underlying cause of, they're telling us about a common cause, which I sometimes talk about in terms of a kind of social anxiety. Think of the insecurities you can have perhaps from a difficult early childhood, and how those insecurities may exacerbate or go with, or maybe offset the insecurities that come from low social status. Worries about your abilities, how you're seen, all those kinds of things, those sorts of stresses. And friendship fits into that pattern, because if you've got friends, they're people who give sort of positive feedback. They like you, they choose your company, they find you interesting, amusing, they laugh at your jokes, whatever it is. Whereas if you feel ignored or avoided by other people, if they don't include you in things, we all know the sort of self-doubts and worries about maybe I'm boring, maybe I'm unattractive, socially gauche, all those kinds of anxieties, which I suspect, it's very plausible to imagine that those kinds of problems are much more important in modern, highly individualistic mass societies. When we're having to put on a sort of good show and a public face and make a good impression to large numbers of new people we meet each day.